Hello, Tolkien geeks, and welcome back to the Voice of Geekdom podcast. I'm your host, Dan, and my guest co-host today, you already know her. It's the face that launched 1,000 ships herself. You don't like that, do you?
No.
The face that launched 1,000 ships, Helen, aka the clueless fangirl.
Yay! Hello, everybody. Long time no see, basically. But the thing is, my dad really gave me the name because he loved Helen of Troy. So, yeah, okay, can't complain.
I surprised you with that the first time that I introduced you as the face that launched 1,000 ships. Yeah. And you loved it the first time. And every time since then, you've cringed.
Because my face won't launch anything except, like, whatever.
So, Helen, back again. Thank you for coming on and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since it's been just the two of us. We've been interviewing various different people recently, which has been fun. Really fun. So who or what are we here to discuss today?
You just want me to pronounce his name.
I do. We always want that.
Yeah, I do. I'm so excited. We are here to talk about the Forger of the Rings, Celebrimbor himself. I have no idea. Chris from the Philosopher's Game probably will correct me on this. But yeah, Celebrimbor. I would say his name like that. I'm very excited for that because he's, such an underrated character, and he's so important because he combines the three great tales. He combines all the stories. He's been there literally from the beginning, and he's a really important character and a descendant of one of the most important characters. So very excited.
Yeah, he links to the three ages really well, doesn't he?
He does, yes.
When you know where he comes from and where where his work ends up. Spoiler, at the bottom of a volcano. Well, that's not technically his work, but you know.
No, that's not his.
But so great character to discuss, and somebody who will be heavily featured, no doubt, in the Amazon Prime adaptation at some point if they ever finish filming it. And also a character who entered the kind of popular sphere as well.
With a game.
The Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor games, where he featured as a ghost, or they called him a wraith, but he was a ghost, really. It wasn't like a wraith like we know.
And they kind of, like twisted his OG storyline, which, I mean, I love the games. Don't get me wrong. Those games are amazing and beautiful, but they're not canon for me. They're something like a nice add-on and nice to have, but they're not canon. And
the beat 'em up action is really well done. They're good games, but they're not particularly, accurate. It's fan fiction storytelling, really.
Yeah, it's not his real life story. Although his ending is pretty similar, like the way he died is very reminiscent to how he really died.
You played those games? Because I haven't played those games.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Games, but if I'm correct, he has a family, and he's like out to avenge his family. Is the backstory for him?
Yeah.
We don't know that he had a family in the book.
Yeah, and he merges into Talion, who's a ranger. And it's those games are amazing. Don't get me wrong. They're really, really good, but it's not lore. And not canon.
So, let's start out with his origins. He was born in Valinor in an unknown year. We don't have a date for it, but it was the years of the trees. So he was a light elf, which is you don't usually think of him as being a light elf. It's not really something you usually think about. No. But he was a high elf, Noldor from Valinor, just like his grandfather and his father.
Yeah, so he must have been there, and this is what I find super interesting. He must have been there at Fëanor's oath. He must have been at the flight. I assume he was with Fëanor and that brood that crossed the sea, burned the ships and all that. So he was there when all the evil deeds, when the kingslaying, when all that happened, right? But Tolkien never, I mean, again, spoiler, and we will talk about that later, but Tolkien never portrays him as evil. He's literally one of the best people of that whole family. But he must have been there when they had that oath, when Fëanor asked his 7 sons of one of whom was his father.
He's complicated and he's dysfunctional, but he's not evil, is he, really?
No. And,
you can forgive him for being a little dysfunctional when you consider who his family were.
Well, look at his family, yeah.
So let's get into them, because that's where he first really shows up in the storyline. His father was Curufin, who was the 5th son of Fëanor, I believe. And he ruled,
and apparently the favorite son of Fëanor, and
the most similar. He's introduced in the Silmarillion as Curufin the Crafty, because he was known for his skill in artificing and I guess jewelsmithing, probably, which I don't think it's specifically said, but considering where his son ends up and who the grandfather was, there seems to be a common link there with that kind of smithing thing that they do. But yeah, that's Curufin. He ruled over Himlad, which was a kingdom that was sort of to the north east of Doriath, and it was kind of between Doriath and Himring, which is Maedhros's capital. So that was where Curufin ruled, and he turns up in the Silmarillion in the Beren and Luthien storyline. Because this is
as one of the baddies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of the villains of the piece. Several villains in that storyline, and he's kind of the most humanized villain. Him and his brother Celegorm, who was the original owner of Huan, the brother. Yeah. And Curufin was involved in that storyline too. And they show up in Nargothrond, which was Finrod's kingdom, and they kind of spread dissent among Finrod's people and stop a significant force from joining up with Beren on his quest. So they're kind of responsible for Finrod's death, really.
They are, because he literally left with a few elves, and you have to imagine, like, 2 strangers. I mean, in a way, they obviously were related. They were all princes of the Noldor, right? And Curufin and his brother, obviously, they were from the older line even, right? They were from Fëanor's line, who's the oldest son of the former king of the Noldor. So all good, but they literally came to a kingdom, Finrod's kingdom, and they in a way took over. And his brother, Orodreth, right? Yeah, it was Orodreth.
Yeah, he was Finrod's nephew.
Oh, was it the nephew? Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I mean, there are so many versions.
I don't remember who's the father, but which brother he was the son of, but he was the nephew. Okay,
and he wanted to take over, but then the 2 brothers swooped in and convinced the people, let your king go. We'll rule your kingdom now. This is it's very weird and odd, because how those 2 lines, not Fëanor's lines, but the lines of his 2 stepbrothers are portrayed like they really stick together. They're very close. They're the goodies, right? They're the good people, and them then taking over the kingdom, just like nothing. That it's weird that nobody literally cared, and he left with how many? Like 7? I think 7 or 11, something like that. I
think it's 11, including Finrod himself.
11. Yeah, they left to aid Beren on his quest to conquer and get back one of the Silmarils.
And then they show up again in the storyline later on, and I think it's Celegorm again tries to shoot Luthien with a bow and arrow, and Beren takes the arrow and gets hit with the arrow instead. So how it's relevant to the son is that the son he basically repudiates and disowns the actions of his father, and he's sort of redeemed, or it's implied that he's redeemed through his actions, because he disowns himself of his father's actions, and he doesn't go with him into exile. So what happens is Orodreth eventually kicks them out of Nargothrond, and they end up wherever they end up. But he stays put, and then later on he shows up in Gondolin. So he becomes a smith of Gondolin.
Yes, which is so cool because again, this portrays, like so there are three great tales of the Silmarillion. So Beren and Luthien, I mean, they're all very close in time, right? So obviously it makes sense, but there's the fall of Gondolin, there's Beren and Luthien, and Children of Húrin, which Turin lives in Nargothrond, right? So he connects because he was at all these places during all these times. So he connects all the three great tales even. He's not mentioned in all of them, sadly. But it's cool if you think like that, because you think, oh, he's just a minor character. Actually, his story is not.
Mm-hmm. So he was present for all of that. And he kind of formed his kind of whole life, really. Set him on a path. He kind of picked up extra smithing skills in Gondolin at that time.
Yes.
Probably perfected his craft and learned things. There was a smith that's mentioned in Unfinished Tales in one of the versions of Galadriel and Celeborn's backstory that we get in Unfinished Tales. It's mentioned that he learned from a smith called Enerthil.
Yeah, Enethil. Yeah,
something like that. And he was a character who made the LSR, which is the Elf Stone.
Yes,
which is the stone that Galadriel later wears in The Lord of the Rings that he gets from Galadriel.
Yes,
and so there are two versions of where that came from. In one, I think it was Enethil who gives it to Eärendil, and then Eärendil takes it to Valinor with him when he sails to Valinor, and then Gandalf ends up giving it back to Galadriel. In the other version, Celebrimbor makes a new version of the original stone, and he makes that stone for her in a section of the text where it's also mentioned that he may have been in love with Galadriel, which is super interesting because they're kind of they're not first cousins; they're kind of distant cousins, but
not that distant though. But
not super distant, but kind of like there are other characters that do marry within their extended family that it seems to be okay. So I mean, even Galadriel and Celeborn themselves are distantly related too. So these things happen, but it's kind of implied that there's a sort of love triangle that happens at some point, which we get no details about, but is very enticing and is something that I think it's a plot string that they could pull on for the Amazon show. For sure.
In the show, 100, I really do think that will happen, and it is very interesting because you could think why did actually Galadriel leave Eregion, right? So there could be different reasons, and this could be one of the reasons that she left because of that. So I'm very intrigued.
It just sort of, my cousin is super skeevy and he's got a crush on me. I need to leave. That's her reason.
Well, yeah, because at that time she already knew Celeborn. Were they already married? I do not really know.
I think so. Yeah.
But so. Yeah, that would be bad then. But it will be very interesting how they portray that. Obviously, she had other reasons to leave, but the whole triangle, and then Sauron we'll come to that when Sauron comes to Eregion. But it's really interesting because, again, as we said, Galadriel and him, they were both born in Aman, right? They are both princes and princesses of the Noldor, and so they knew each other for a very, very long time, and in the end he gives her one of the rings as well. So but still he was part of Fëanor's family, and we know the part of Galadriel's family, and Galadriel literally hated Fëanor. I mean, we talked about her, was that on your it was on your channel in the Galadriel stream when we explained, she literally mistrusted. He was her uncle, and normally elves and family, and that is always happy-go-lucky. No, not in this family. It's a very dysfunctional family, and she didn't like her uncle, and he's a direct descendant.
They were unfriends, were they?
They were unfriends forever. She didn't give him her hair. And it's, he resembles Fëanor in many there's so many things, and we will talk about this now. But he resembles him, but not in his, evilness, wickedness, his need for higher thing. That was never how he's portrayed, how Tolkien portrayed him.
His short temper. He's quite a measured, calculated character, really, in comparison
and
with
not
Fëanor.
arrogant, and he didn't have all the traits that family had, right?
I think his biggest weakness is probably naivete, really. And we'll see that later on. But
I wouldn't even call it that. I really think he wanted to take on his grandfather's legacy, not the evil parts, but the legacy of being the greatest craftsman on the planet, in Middle-earth, wherever. And I really think he wanted to take that on. He wanted to be the next in line, because his father was said to be similar, but he was never said, like it in the text says, he is second in that field to Fëanor. And so, Fëanor created the Silmarils. The book is called the Silmarillion. Celebrimbor created the Rings of Power. And what is the book called? The Lord of the Rings. So obviously, one story is about Fëanor and his deeds, and one story is about Celebrimbor. I mean, not really, but you know what I mean. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's history repeating itself in some ways.
It is.
It's a different storyline, but it is basically the same motif of fighting over jewelry. World wars fought over jewelry.
I get it. I'm a girl. I love bling.
Like that. What do you think?
Well,
and it's kept in the family, isn't it? So
yes. Yeah.
So that's, we talked about Gondolin. He survives, obviously, the sack of Gondolin, the fall of Gondolin, and I would assume that he escapes Gondolin with like Tuor's group.
With Idril, he must.
It must have been either he was part of that group or he wasn't there at the time. Those are the only options, really.
Because we know, and this is one of the questions. I took a few notes. This is one of the questions I wanted to ask you. And what do you think? Like, how can we imagine this? Obviously, it won't be in the show, but Gondolin is my favorite part of the Legendarium. I mean, my Twitter handle is I'd rather be in Gondolin.
Well documented that you love Gondolin, yeah.
I do. So he was there, and we know Meglin is also from a line because his father, Eol, the Dark Elf, was also one of the greatest smiths of Middle-earth. He created Gurthang, he created a lot of important, the Black Sword, and he created really cool things. And Meglin was said, to have worked very closely with the dwarves as well. And he was also a great smith. So Meglin must have known and was pretty, my guess is they were friends. Also
they were probably either friends or enemies. I mean, they certainly would have known each other.
And it would be interesting because in Gondolin, everybody is connected to a house. So Meglin was the house of the mole. Then you have the house of the harp. Then you have the house of the golden flower, which is Glorfindel. Exactly. So you have all these houses. So which house was he? Because Fëanor had the star but there's no house of the star or anything, but he's from the house of, so this is what Tolkien, I'm missing this link because Tolkien, said, how many houses were there? I think 14, 13?
I don't remember. I think the Fall of Gondolin storyline better than I do.
Yeah. So all the houses, but to which house did Celebrimbor belong to? Because I think he should have had his own house because first of all, he was a great craftsman. So there was a reason for him to have a house, but it's not mentioned in the Fall of Gondolin. So But I think this is due to, Tolkien didn't never finish all these stories.
Yeah,
and
well,
he never
the Fall of
connected.
Gondolin version with the houses that you're referring to is from the Book of Lost Tales version.
It's from the book.
So I don't think Celebrimbor even existed at that point. I mean, Fingolfin didn't even exist yet at that point. So, probably, the non-overlapping magisteria in terms of, the two story threads that we're talking about here.
But it's a cool thought, isn't it? That he must have known Meglin, and maybe they worked together. Maybe they worked together with the dwarves. And maybe you're right, because as you said, Meglin traveled very often, right? To trade with the dwarves, to whatever he did. This is when he met Morgoth and when he got captured, actually. And so I think Celebrimbor, you might be right. Maybe he wasn't even there during the Fall of Gondolin. He's not mentioned.
No, we don't know. There's speculation.
No,
things to think about, but it's interesting that he was around through all these events and was there in the background, kind of. But yes, so he shows up in the Second Age in Lindon along with all the other exiles, and before that, I would assume that he would have gone to the Havens, etc., as well, along with the other exiles from Gondolin.
Yes.
But at the start of the Second Age, he shows up in Lindon, and there is established the kingdom of Gil-galad. And we covered him on your channel. So there should be,
was the last High King of the Noldor.
The last High King of the Noldor. There should be a link above Helen's head for the stream on her channel that we covered that character. So he basically, as a Fëanorian, I would imagine wouldn't have been that comfortable being ruled by another branch of the family. He obviously had ambition to rule his own, have his own dominion, as you would say, his own kingdom of his own. And so he goes, in at least most versions of the storyline that I'm aware of, he goes along with Celeborn and Galadriel, who early on in the Second Age rule a small fiefdom on the shores of Lake Nenwiel. If I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then around the year 750 of the Second Age, they all go together and establish the kingdom of Eregion. It's kind of to the south of where Rivendell is, between and Moria, basically. And that is the kingdom of the Noldor in Eriador.
Because Galadriel later goes through Moria, right?
Yeah, what happens is in the Silmarillion, in the section of the Silmarillion called the Rings of Power, it's stated that what happens is Sauron comes and Annatar, and in his guise as Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. And he kind of does something a bit like what Morgoth does or Melkor does in the Years of the Trees in Valinor, where he kind of sows dissent and kind of starts kind of sowing seeds of lies that get kind of magnified. It's a very close parallel with that in some ways, where he
disguising himself as somebody who wants to help and train them in craftsmanship, and they did exactly the same.
It's even a bit different because he's in disguise, but they don't know that it's Sauron. But after having failed to corrupt Gil-galad and to even be allowed entry to Lindon, he goes to Eregion, and he gets into the heads of the guild of the Gwaith-i-Mírdain.
You rolled the perfection. Gwaith-i-Mírdain.
Well, that was perfection. I mean,
no.
I can't hope to hold a candle to your rolled R's, but
just in our nature.
I've been hanging out with you and other Germans like Chris for too long now, I think. And I've got it into my head to roll my every R. And also, people out there on social media like to troll us when we get names wrong on YouTube, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're not as bad as the Americans, like.
Yes,
Shame.
But yeah, so that's the Gwaith-i-Mírdain, who are the people of the jewelsmiths. Translates to, I think it's a Sindarin name. And they are kind of,
and he founded them, which is
Celebrimbor's faction within Eregion at first, because there's kind of a rebellion. It seems to be like a kind of like peaceful rebellion. Like it you don't get the sense that there was like a civil war that was fought or anything like that. But eventually Galadriel leaves, and as we said earlier, there's several reasons why she could have left. And that is something that we will certainly probably see in the television show, or at least we'll see references to it. If not, we'll see it portrayed. So that'll be interesting. I mean, what's your theory on that? Because you seem to be favouring that he was in love with her theory, and she left because she was like, no, I'm with my husband now.
Because I'm sorry, dude. The thing is, well, he didn't have descendants, right? So he probably wasn't married. So I think he was a bachelor at that time. And, the way Fëanor, his ancestor, is portrayed, I don't think Fëanor was really in love with Galadriel, but there was something weird going on. No, there was something weird. There was weird tension. It was not just the hair he wanted to capture in the Silmarils. It was weird. And you know how Tolkien always portrays this unnatural love, like Meglin being in love with his cousin Idril, like other, like close relation. Like it's, I don't know. He never. These stories never have a happy ending. Let's say that. And this is why I do think that.
But it was also the Rings of Power, though, wasn't it? Because
it was the Rings of Power, but then in the end, he gave her, and this is why I'm questioning this, because he gave her the ring, right? And so I do think there were other, because look, Galadriel always, why did she leave Aman in the first place? She left because she wanted to rule a kingdom of her own. So she was in another bloody kingdom where she didn't rule on her own, right? So she took the opportunity, because the other king died, right? And so she and Celeborn took over Lothlorien, because the former king of Lothlorien, he died. What was his name again? Amroth, exactly. So I think that was more of her why she left, the real reason. But yeah, I really do think there was this tension, and she mistrusted Sauron, because it's clear she did, but she never said, this is Sauron. Celebrimbor actually was the first one to discover it when he heard, when Sauron made the spell for the ring, Celebrimbor kind of telepathically heard Sauron saying the words, which, please, I want to see that on movie. Like, I want to see that on film. This is an epic moment. Just imagine Sauron forging the One Ring, saying the words in the dark speech, and Celebrimbor heard it. There's a reference in the book that he heard him saying it. And yeah, so I do think Galadriel, she mistrusted him from the beginning. She didn't know who he exactly was, but she mistrusted him.
No, the plot wouldn't make sense if she knew who he was. Cause that's the end.
She would have said, if she wouldn't have said to everybody, then listen, this is a Maiar, a former, pupil and student and bestie of first in command of Melkor. She would have said that, but she didn't know, but she mistrusted him. And so I do think there was this conflict also brewing, of Galadriel being like, why are you trusting him? Why do you let him in? Why are you forging rings for this dude? And he was, like I said, I don't think he was naive. I think he he really just wanted to craft these amazing objects, because we know he crafted rings before, but they were like not as good, not as powerful, so he tried many times.
No, he built up towards the elven rings, didn't he?
Yes, and
it's implied that he made many lesser rings of power as well. We never find out anything about the lesser rings of power. We know that there are other rings out there.
But they're not connected like all the other rings, like the Dwarven and the 9 rings of men and all that. But so I do think, he really wanted to, like make this project happen. And Galadriel was mistrusting, and I do think there was tension, and then she left. I think there are many factors. It's not just the love triangle. I think it's many factors.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think in any version of the story, I think the Rings of Power are definitely a point of, the friction and conflict between the two characters.
Yeah. And there you can see, like, literally the ring is already, although the ring was not forged at that time, but this seeding mistrust amongst races, amongst people, is already happening. And it's because I do think they were close at one time. Then she left. And so the elves were less powerful because, they spread out. And, if you spread out and if you have fractions there and there and there and Rivendell, and it's obviously you're less powerful than if you're all together and you can fight Sauron together. He again, what he did in Numenor, he again reached his goal, of dividing them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So Sauron leaves after Galadriel and Celeborn have already left. He leaves around the year 1500 of the Second Age.
Yeah. Yes. Just before 100 years before he forged.
Exactly. Yeah. So Sauron was there for over 100 years in Eregion, and
as Annatar, Hot Sauron.
Hot Sauron, yes.
Please follow Hot Sauron on Twitter.
Yeah, sure. He's not the most interesting account, Hot Sauron.
He's not, but the name is the best name ever. I want to ask him, so can I take over your name? Can I pay you? And then I would tweet the heck out of that account.
Commission artwork with Sauron with his abs out, and
just thirst. This would be a Sauron thirst channel, people.
Yeah, well, we might have an actual actor to thirst over at some point as well, so that'll be interesting.
Sorry.
We talked about that at length with Cliff, didn't we? With Quick Beam.
Yes.
I think we embarrassed him by the end of the conversation.
No, he was totally okay with Hot Sauron.
Yeah, he's on board with Hot Sauron for sure. So anyway, it's actually, speaking of actors, who do you think would play Celebrimbor? This might be a good time to ask this question.
I've no idea about this cast. I literally, I know who plays Galadriel, this Welsh girl. She looks cool. I think she can, Morbeth Clark or whatever her name is.
It's a tough first name to pronounce. You have to roll the R, actually. It's Morbeth Clark.
Morbeth Clark.
You don't have to roll the R quite that much.
Hey, come on, don't shame my R. She looks good. I think the Elrond guy is confirmed. It's that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not confirmed. There's a guy who we think is probably Elrond. Yeah. Because the rumor is he's been cast as a character that. There's like a code name for the different characters that have leaked, and the code name for Elrond implies that he's also got a brother, because there's two characters that have rhyming names. I can't remember what the name is, but but yeah, and also he looks quite a bit like.
But wait a moment,
Agent Smith.
Agent Smith, exactly.
The great Morpheus. We meet at last.
And you are?
A Smith. Agent Smith.
You all look the same to me.
But then he has to play both roles.
In theory. I mean,
twins.
we don't actually know that Elrond and Elros are identical twins. It's always in artwork. It's always assumed that they are because it's kind of cool to assume that they are.
Yeah.
I had a thumbnail for my Elros video recently that had Hugo Weaving. I remember his name. His face on the thumbnail. I thought clickbait for people. But yeah, so Celebrimbor. I mean, out of the current cast, I think, and this is my unfounded theory. I don't have any inside information, of course, but my unfounded theory is that Joseph Morley, whatever his name is, might be quite a good Celebrimbor. He looks kind of ageless in a kind of elven way, and he looks Noldor because he's very dark. He looks very sort of stern and serious and kind of.
Is that
intense.
the Game of Thrones guy?
Yeah, that's Ned Stark's brother from Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Yeah. But
the rumor is that he might be Sauron, which you hate, don't you? But
yeah.
but
okay, I'm not like, I'll be okay with anyone really. It's more about the acting and all that. But I want blonde hood Sauron because I'm like hooked on all these, fan arts. This is how he's portrayed, but apparently he's not. But I'm literally like, seriously, cast anyone. I don't give a, just play the role in a good way. I don't care how you look. Like all these discussions about race and all that, that's so disgusting and annoying. And like, just be a good actor. I'm fine with everything.
Fair enough. So you have no theories on that? No.
But it would be weird because he's way older than all the others. Then Celebrimbor would be way, and I mean, it's funny enough that they say young Galadriel because literally at that time, how old was she? Like already 3,000 years old. And they don't age at I mean, Círdan has a beard. Okay, that's it though. So
I think actually in the laws and customs of the Eldar, it does say that elves aged like very, 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 very slowly, but they do age.
Yeah, but like Galadriel would be the same age like slowly. Him. So yeah, but Galadriel would be the same age like him. So the actor is, I assume, 45-ish, and that Galadriel girl is like 20. So it wouldn't. I don't know.
Yeah, I do agree.
And if they have, then I think they should rather be Elrond, Galadriel. They should be the same age. The
Elrond actor, who is another Game of Thrones actor, he looks young as well.
He's very young, yes.
He was young Ned Stark, wasn't he, in Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
The guy I'm thinking of as possibly Elrond anyway. We don't. Yeah. Again, we don't know, but hopefully we'll find out one day.
We will. I mean, obviously we will. I'm happy with being. I mean, surprise me, people. I'm okay with everything. I want good music. I want good action. I'm not really. I do think all these casting agencies, they always did a pretty good job. Like, look at Lord of the Rings. All these actors, they were not really well known.
They spent like 2 or 3 years scouring the earth for actors for this show as well.
And Game of Thrones as well. Nobody knew most of the cast, and they were perfect. So I'm hopeful. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's get back to the storyline of the Second Age, the Forging of the Rings of Power. So Sauron leaves Eregion around 1500, and then after that point is when Celebrimbor decides that he is ready, and this is when he's going to create his masterworks, which are his most prized works forever after, that he eventually, spoiler, dies for, which were the 3 elven rings of power. Narya, the ring of fire, Vilya, the ring of air, and Nenya, the ring of water. And so those were his masterworks, and he initially kept hold of them up until the point at which the One Ring was forged in the year 1600, which we talked about already. It's going to be a wonderful scene to see on camera again. And yeah, we will see Sauron's like evil iambic tetrameter, and
please, yes,
I assume that we will see that play out like that. Maybe he won't actually say the rhyme, but you want him to, don't you? As a book
Of course.
person.
If not, I'll recite from the book while seeing the scene.
Yeah, I mean, I have lines that I wish that we had have gotten in the films. There's several that I wish we had have gotten, like Isildur's line about the One Ring being a weregild of his house and stuff that we never saw on screen. But it is what it is.
Yeah, but the prologue of Galadriel was so good. It's actually one of the favorite parts of the films for me.
Yeah. Well, the prologue's really good for the most part. So yeah,
but can I before we come to the Three Rings, because we skipped something?
Did we?
So yeah, what do you think? And I have a question. I told you beforehand I have some questions for you. What do you think? So he forged these rings for dwarves and men, and it is said that he even gave the first woven ring to Durin himself.
Durin the Third, yeah.
Yes. What do you think? So what did Sauron tell him? Forge rings? Give them out to... No, I will, you will, we will, whatever. Because look, it's not just craftsmanship. There's enchantment as well. Because he wouldn't know how to enchant the 3 elven rings if he wouldn't have done it, or Sauron taught him with the other rings. So these rings are enchanted. It's not just forging a ring; it's enchanted rings.
No, yeah.
There's a
magical component that goes into the construction of some sort.
What did he tell him? What are these rings for? Did he tell him these are dwarven rings? Did he tell him these are rings for men? Did he tell him we will forge them to give them out to make their kingdoms more powerful, to aid them against... What did he tell them? Like, why
I don't think Sauron told him to give them out to people. I don't think he did that because...
Okay, but what did he tell him while he forged them? Because he had to enchant them. So what did he tell him? I never had...
So these rings, they give you special powers. They give you more power. They enhance your innate abilities, or they bring out certain qualities in you. They bring you fortune. There are a number of things he could have said. We don't know is the answer really, but certainly he would have built them up to be more than just pieces of jewelry.
But don't you think
I don't think that he was persuading them. He was persuading Celebrimbor to hand them out to people. I think Celebrimbor gave one of the dwarven rings to Durin. And so we're going to get to this in a minute, but with the dwarven rings, he gives up the location of the dwarven rings when Sauron tortures him. So so they weren't there when Sauron captured him.
Yeah,
but it's kind of, we don't know what happens, but it's kind of implied that Sauron tracks them down at that point, or at least puts in motion plans to find them and track them down and seize them from their holders, whoever they may be. We only know what happened to one of them in the immediate future after the forging of the rings of power, but the 9 mortal rings were all still in Eregion at the time. So when Sauron comes in,
he took that.
He takes them then and there.
I just always wondered, like, he made him forge the rings. What did he tell him these rings? Because if you put a spell on a ring, you need to know what these rings are for. And because we know exactly what the 9 mortal rings did, and they corrupted them. So the spell must have been an evil. It can't be a good spell. So did he just forge them, and Sauron then corrupted and put a spell? It's interesting, and I want to see again.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the process works. Yeah, that's the thing, we don't know. I mean, the only ring that we know a little bit about the construction of is the One Ring, which we know, again, going back to the rhyme, we know that
but I think it must have been similar.
Incantation was... I assume the ring incantation, for those who don't know, the ring incantation on the One Ring.
The common tongue
It says 1 ring to rule them all. 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, find them.
That shows up obviously in the fire when the ring is heated up, and that is, at least it's heavily implied, or it's more or less stated that Sauron said that aloud when he created the ring.
He did. Celebrimbor heard him saying it.
And Celebrimbor heard him say that. That seems to be the obvious assumption there.
From miles and miles and miles and miles away. By the way,
like you said earlier, telepathically. So let's sum up the thoughts on the construction of the rings then.
Yeah.
So what? So I'll shoot the question back to you. Actually, let's say we know about the One Ring's construction. We know that presumably there was poetry involved, and certainly we know there's an inscription on the ring itself, and we know that Celebrimbor telepathically heard that inscription from the source at the forging of the ring. Mm-hmm. So my assumption would be that some sort of similar magic is involved in the construction of all of the rings of power.
Yes,
we don't know that, we can't prove that, but it seems to, like you said, it seems to be the case that there is some magical element involved in the construction of the rings, because they're not just pieces of jewelry; they do stuff.
But I do think so. This is my.
Go ahead.
So my theory is, because look, what do the rings do? They corrupt people. I don't think Celebrimbor spoke a spell that made the rings corrupt people. So I do think he forged them. He saw Sauron doing things then later to the rings, corrupting the rings. And I do think in the end, Sauron also trained, because this is like his ring was like the 3 elven rings for Celebrimbor. His ring was the perfection of all his learning cycle of doing this to all the other rings. And then he poured all his energy, all his malice, everything in this one ring. But he must have poured some malice and some binding spells and whatnot to the other rings. Obviously, it didn't work on the dwarven rings, because I think dwarves are not beings of Eru. They're different beings. They're created by somebody else with different things in mind. So they were not part of the music. And I think this is why it didn't work on them. Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
And so I really do think Sauron also trained on the other rings. And I don't think Celebrimbor put a spell on the rings. He forged them. He saw Sauron doing things, and then he created in secret the elven rings, because at that, and this is where the dates are very confusing, because Sauron created the One Ring, but the 3 elven rings were already created. Why? Because Celebrimbor only learned that Sauron had an evil agenda, like really, really learned, when he heard him telepathically doing this with the ring. Then he realized, what the F, this is a Maiar, this is Sauron, blah, blah, blah. Then he just realized it. Before he didn't know, why did he create in secret 3 elven rings?
I think it's just, it was always his ambition, and I think it goes back to his uncle, his grandfather. He wanted to eclipse the achievement of his grandfather. That's why there were 3. I think.
Yes, true. But it's specifically, they are not connected to the One Ring. Not really. They are, and they are not. They are not touched by Sauron. So I think he still had a plan. It was not just to craft something mirroring the 3 Silmarils. It's weird. Did he had a suspicion? Did he in the end believe Galadriel was their contact? And then he was like, okay, maybe you're right. Just to be sure, I'm creating these, because he created them before the One Ring. It's weird. It's
you could be right that it goes back to the Galadriel split as well. You could be right about that, because I mean, her reason for leaving probably almost certainly was connected to this conflict over the rings and over Annatar. And yeah, it could well be at that point that he recalled her last words before she left, or something along those lines, and he came to the conclusion that she was right all along, and maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very quick to go to her for her counsel when he realizes who Sauron is and what his plan was all along. She is the first person he seeks out, and she advises him to split the rings up and send them away.
And it's interesting that he doesn't go to his king, to Gil-galad.
No. I mean, well, she's closer, so maybe that's part of the reason. And they have a stronger.
They have a stronger
closer relationship than he does with Gil-galad.
Right.
I tend to think him and Gil-galad are not friendly.
You reckon? Because he's the High King, and it didn't pass to his because he's the last living descendant of Fëanor.
The House of Fëanor being the dispossessed again, I think.
Yeah.
I think we're connected back to that.
But he's not portrayed as that, and there are sons of Fëanor who willingly and freely pass the kingship to the stepbrothers' lines. So I think he's one of them who is okay with.
You think he's more like Maedhros than he is like his father?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that too.
I hope he's not like his father.
No. No, he's definitely not like his father. I mean, he as we said earlier on, he basically disowned his own father.
But still, Tolkien portrayed him as the guy who forged the rings, who turned, for example, the Witch King, right? I mean, this ring created the Witch King and other evil people. And, Fëanor's deeds with the 3 Silmarils is also, it's this bloody line of Fëanor, doing it again. He had other intentions. You are completely right. But it's still, I always ask myself...
It's not that different, though. Should we do a reading? Yes. Because there's an appropriate reading for this. Okay, so this is a section of the Rings of Power from the Silmarillion. This is the kind of storyline of the forging of the rings and leading into the War of the Ring and the Third Age stuff at the end. It was in Eregion that the counsels of Sauron were most gladly received. For in that land, the Noldor desired ever to increase the skill and subtlety of their works. So that opening sentence says it all. They've not changed.
Nope.
The Noldor desired ever to increase the skill and subtlety of their works. Moreover, they were not at peace in their hearts, since they had refused to return into the West, and they desired both to stay in Middle-earth, which indeed they loved, and yet to enjoy the bliss of those that had departed. Therefore they hearkened to Sauron, and they learned of him many things, for his knowledge was great. In those days, the smiths of Ost-in-Edil, that's the capital city of Eregion, by the way, the smiths of Ost-in-Edil surpassed all that they had contrived before, and they took thought and they made rings of power. But Sauron guided their labours, and he was aware of all that they did, for his desire was to set a bond upon the elves and to bring them under his vigilance. So yeah, I mean, that whole paragraph basically tells you it's the Noldor being the Noldor again.
Pulling an Noldor.
Yeah, it's pulling an Noldor. That should be an idiom in the Tolkien fandom.
I personally identify as Noldor. I mean, look at me.
So Celebrimbor's whole kind of like thing is just. It's like his grandfather. He's like mini Fëanor a little bit. He doesn't have the rage issues, and he doesn't have the kind of like egomaniacal nature to quite the same degree. But he is still cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. Oh, he has the same ambitions that lead to, to accept evil amongst your ranks. Because the thing is, look, Fëanor did the same in Valinor. What happened? So Melkor was the one. Fëanor hated Melkor, and in the end, Melkor killed his father, right? But he was the one listening to him, and wasn't he supposed to be the super clever one, right? So, but he listened to him. He listened to all the lies he told him about his brothers wanting the throne and overthrowing him and all that. And he believed it, and he started to build weapons and all that. So,
and even when the Valar ask him for the Silmarils when they want to restore the light of the trees.
Yeah.
Because the Silmarils are like a kind of like backup, like a backup hard drive for the light of the trees.
Yeah,
he repeats Melkor's words in his own head.
He does. Yeah. And he calls the
Valar. You can call that like an unreliable narrator, because how does the narrator of the Silmarillion know what Fëanor was thinking? But assuming that that's an omnipotent narrator and that that was what he was really thinking, he was literally taking on Melkor's words word for word. So that's interesting, that both fell for these lies, although they should know better, right? They're clever elves and all that, but they just wanted this so badly that they didn't care. Sauron always knows which button to push, doesn't he?
Of course, yes. This is what we said, Sauron, again, here, what he did with all that, creating the rings, like making Galadriel leave and seeding mistrust and whatever. He did that without real war. He's not a warrior. He's just a cunning... I don't know I don't really know word, but he's epic.
I can't think of a polite word. He's a son of a bitch. Let's call him that.
Yeah, he is, and he's like same in Númenor. He didn't win the battle against Númenor with his armies. They drowned themselves, basically. They did this to themselves, obviously by him aiding them. But it's interesting how he always does that. And you always think of him as how he's portrayed in the movies, with his big armies and as a warrior. That wasn't his strength. His strength lied somewhere else. And this is really interesting. It's a great time for Sauron. It is.
Yeah, this is his best work, really, isn't it, at this point?
Yes. Yeah.
Again, just a small plug. We did a stream about Sauron, or a podcast about Sauron, whatever you want to call it, on your channel.
Yeah,
so
that was really good. Yeah,
there would be a link somewhere around where the logo and Helen's forehead is. Later on when I upload this. So cool. Anyway, that's that. We talked about that. We should talk about the death of Celebrimbor, I guess, and the downfall.
What? Yeah.
To move on. So Sauron forges the Ring of Power in 1600, as we've said several times now. And at this point, as we said just now, Celebrimbor, he seeks out Galadriel and he goes to her for advice, and she says to him, look, we need to keep the Elven Rings safe. Sauron's going to want these. We can't use them, but we need to take them off and send them to different locations and keep them secret. Yeah. So they get sent basically to Gil-galad at that point. And he gives one of them to her. So she gets the Ring of Water, Ring of Adamant, which is Nenya.
Yeah. Círdan gets the Ring of Fire.
Yeah, so there's two different versions of what happens to the other two. Yeah. So, basically Círdan gets one of them, which is the Ring of Fire, which he later gives to Gandalf, which I think is the same in both versions. But the other one, Gil-galad keeps it for a while in one of the versions, and in the other he gives it to
Elrond.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And do you know what I find so beautiful? And I mentioned that in, I don't know, one of my videos, but I find it so beautiful if you think about how the Silmarils ended, right? Because we talked about the rings are mirroring the three Silmarils. And yes, there are parallels. So Fëanor created and crafted the three great gems. Wars were fought over these gems, and they were the main protagonists of the Silmarillion. And now we have the three elven rings, and the Silmarils ended. One ended in fire.
Yeah, Mandos actually predicts this as well, doesn't he? There's a line at the beginning of the book where Mandos says, their fates will be in air, water, and fire.
Exactly.
And the first time you read that, you'd have no idea what he means. But
no, and it's exactly that. They end in the elements. So one ends in fire, one ends in the water, and one ends in the air with Eärendil in Vingelot. And it's so interesting that you think, so Elrond, who is Eärendil's son, has the ring of air,
which is
so his father has the Silmaril that is in the air. Elrond has the ring of air. Galadriel has the ring of water, and the Silmaril, was cast into the waters, and
by
Gandalf,
Maglor, who was Elrond's foster father.
Exactly, and Círdan or Gandalf then later have the ring of fire, and one Silmaril was cast in the fire. So it's really, really cool that they have very similar endings, and then similar magical powers, or however you want to call it. It's so cool if you think about it. If you don't know the Silmarils and the Silmarillion, it's the rings are connected to that.
Yeah, this is certainly an obvious thematic connection there.
Yeah,
this is why I think he was definitely thinking about his grandfather's work when he made the three rings.
Yeah, because he enchanted them.
I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's an Easter egg there for people who have read the Silmarillion. I don't think
No.
I think it's deliberate.
Yeah, he enchanted them because he obviously knew of the Silmarils. I mean, he left Valinor to fight for the Silmarils. And so the rings were reminiscence of these Silmarils, because he must have gave them the power.
Speaking of him leaving Valinor, do you think Celebrimbor actually said the words to the oath? Do you think he
It's interesting.
He took the oath himself?
No, I think it was
never said, is it? But
I think it was literally just the seven sons. I don't think it were other people. The others followed Fëanor's words. We know Fëanor, held his epic speeches. And even Galadriel.
Maybe there was a sort of custody battle as well, because Curufin had a wife in Valinor who didn't come with Curufin. So, she stayed. So did Nerdinel, and
exactly. Some of the wives stayed back.
Fëanor's wife, just to explain.
Yeah.
So, I wonder whether there was a sort of custody battle where she said, no, Celebrimbor's staying here with me, and then he was like, no, he's coming, and then he just basically abducted the son, and he didn't ever want to go, and maybe that's why he rebelled in the end. Rebelled from Fëanor's point of view, from Curufin's point of view, but redeemed himself in the eyes of
I do think, but I do think it was a good influence of Galadriel and these people. How him fleeing Gondolin, and him is experiencing all that, evil deeds, because Nargothrond, he knew what happened. I mean, Gondolin, the sons of Fëanor had nothing to do with that. That was, we can't blame them for this one. But Nargothrond and a lot of other things. So I think slowly he realized, well, my side of the family is not really the good one. So I think him being influenced and close with Galadriel and these parts of the family, I think that... I don't think he took part in the oath, no.
No. It's never stated, is it? And
no.
You would think that he would be bound to it in some way if he did take the oath.
But then he died, the thing is, he died. He didn't survive like Galadriel and others. He died. So the whole line of Fëanor was cursed, and they all
Also,
died.
what are you going to do at the start of the second age? Where we've just said what happens to the three Silmarils. There's only one of them that could possibly be possible to get.
Yeah.
What are you going to do to try and get pursue to the ends of the earth the Silmaril that's flying above the earth in a flying ship?
Yeah.
It
wasn't even there anymore. He was guarding the doors of night, right? And Melkor.
Yeah.
How can you reach that? Can't even go there, I assume.
No. Well, Elendil does touch down in Valinor, though. He does visit, I think. Anyway, interesting to think about, I guess.
Yeah.
So the rings are dispensed, and Nenya's given to Galadriel, and Narya and Vilya are given to Gil-galad, and Narya goes to Círdan. And then the war of the elves and Sauron is the next thing. So Sauron invades Eriador in the year 1695.
Yeah.
And what happens is Gil-galad gets word of it, but he's right on the coast on the far side, away from the action. So so it takes him a while to raise an army and send Elrond at the head of an army to go and help. And Sauron goes through the gap of Rohan, which isn't Rohan yet, because Rohan doesn't exist yet. But
Calenardon,
yeah. So he goes up through that way, and he just marches straight up along the Misty Mountains. He gets there first, and he attacks Eregion, and he besieges Ostin Edil, and he captures Celebrimbor. And this is when he seizes the Nine Rings, as we said earlier on, and he and he's unable to find the three because they've been sent away, and he tortures.
I wonder how does he know
for information.
How does he know of the three?
How does he know of them? He senses them, I guess, in some kind of.
I think the One Ring can sense them because they had them on.
Sure.
Because at that time they did wear them.
I think Galadriel even says that if you're wearing the ring, he can
sense
connect telepathically over long distances, and you can sense.
Yeah. She says, in that mirror, Galadriel's mirror scene, which I was reading for thousands of channels. She says, the door is closed now, but he could read my thoughts.
Yeah. Do you know what I think when I hear you talk? I think Galadriel. She's Galadriel. She would make a wonderful Galadriel.
Who?
You.
But I'm not blonde.
You're not blonde. You're not tall.
I'm not an elf. Sorry, people.
You don't have pointy ears. You're not immune to aging.
What?
Yeah. So anyway, where were we? Sorry. So obviously you were asking a question. How does he know? He senses it, doesn't he? We don't know. We don't know how it works, but he senses them over long distances. And as I said, Galadriel says it in the book. In that chapter, she says it, and she says, if you knew how, she's saying this to Frodo. If you knew how, you would be able to do it too. You'd be able to sense Sauron over long distances, or
But why do you think? I always ask that myself. Why do you think are the three rings subject to the One Ring? Because Sauron never touched them. Celebrimbor made them. The elves are wearing them. How did Celebrimbor make a mistake? I
think it's the underlying magic that he uses. It's just too similar to what Sauron taught him still. It's a different kind of magic, and that's why it doesn't work, basically. That's why when Sauron puts the ring on and tries to use his mojo to control them, it doesn't work. But it's close enough that there's some connection there still.
Yeah. Because I always wondered, because Tolkien makes clear that Sauron never touched the rings. And then I always wondered, but how can they say that they are the subject to the One Ring? It doesn't really make sense, but maybe this is the concept of magic that he never explains, and also the magic comes with a price. Yes, you can have this amazing ring and it does this and this and this, and it preserves nature and blah, 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 but it's still magic, and it's still, it's not nothing, it's magic. So magic drowns energy from somewhere, so, and this is, I think this is the idea behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe. It's kind of like it's not really the right word, but it's like a kind of like Harry Potter Horcrux thing that he does with the One Ring, isn't it? Where he puts some of himself into it.
I have to out myself. I've never read a Harry Potter book, nor did I ever watch a Harry Potter movie. Sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about.
We were just...
You want to be careful. People will think you're... up to something.
Yeah, I know. I knew that.
Everybody will be like, she's the worst geek on this planet. What is she doing here? I never did. I always thought this is for children.
Yeah, I read the Harry Potter books when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and I read them because in my English class there was a girl I liked who had read them, and I wanted to talk to her about them. So
you're like Celebrimbor, forging rings for girls.
Yeah, reading books for girls.
Yeah. Okay.
She's going, oh, he hasn't changed. I don't know where to go next.
Horcrux, rings,
Horcrux,
magic,
yeah.
power.
So I mean, to explain Harry Potter to you, then Voldemort in Harry Potter, he has these things called Horcruxes, which are dark magic that he uses in order to prevent him from dying. So that's why he doesn't die when he tries to kill Harry at the beginning, when he's a kid, because there's Horcruxes, and he's done some dark magic where he's poured part of himself into these other artifacts. So it's kind of like that.
She stole from Tolkien.
Yeah, she steals from Tolkien all the time. Everybody does. Are you kidding me?
True. Yep. Hello to George.R.R. Martin, if you're listening.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the worst offenders. He steals from Tolkien and then criticizes Tolkien at the same time. He's like literary father figure issues, like daddy issues he's got, basically.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, Tolkien would have written his books differently if he was a child of our time. The books would maybe, who knows, be a bit more similar to the A Song of Ice and Fire books. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't be as cynical and
no.
So they wouldn't be as secular either.
It would still be a Catholic, probably. Yeah. No. Yeah, but yeah, it's. I mean, I think Martin is a good writer. It's okay. No, I don't. It's okay to copy Tolkien and to criticize things. I do criticize things. Tolkien, not that much actually. I criticize that the books are not finished. Like, I want the real Fall of Gondolin. Like, I don't want Christopher's version of it.
Just like Martin, right? I mean, you know, Martin hasn't got the excuse of being dead though, but
yeah. Yeah, I'm still waiting for these books. No, but yeah, I want the real Fall of Gondolin. Please give me the whole story, not just Christopher's version, which is, I mean, no.
Possibly featuring a young Celebrimbor. You know, like we said,
please tell me.
There's loads of cool stuff you could do with a full version, properly adapted version of Gondolin.
I know. Please, one day.
I found some really good fan art the other day, actually.
Yeah.
Of like all of the. I don't know if is there 7 gates of Gondolin or
7.
It's like there's gate of silver and the gate of gold and all these different gates, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I found these really cool fan arts of like all of the different gates and then loads of the different like locations that are on the map and stuff. It's just it's just ready to be made into some sort of TV show.
Please make it happen in our lifetime, please.
It'll happen.
Yeah,
I'm confident. Anyway, so Celebrimbor, let's talk about him. So try and sum him up. We'll talk about his death first. So he was tortured for information on the rings, as we've said now, and he refuses to give up the information of the 3 rings. But he does give up the information of where the 7 rings are, as I said already. And so Sauron kind of figures it out. It's the worst kept secret in Middle-earth is who's got the 3 elven rings, because it's obviously Gil-galad, it's obviously Galadriel, and probably Elrond, or Círdan, it's one of those 2 who's got the other one. So it's Sauron figures it out. So he puts Celebrimbor to death. He executes him, and I think there's an account of him being shot to death with arrows. I think that's
It's actually really brutal. And
it's one of the most gruesome images in Tolkien. Actually, this I think.
It's very barbaric. It's very medieval. It reminds me, I was literally born in Transylvania, for everybody who didn't know. I was. And I played as a kid at Dracula's castle. I have pictures of that.
Castle Dracula, home for many centuries to a dreadful dynasty of vicious vampire ducks, the Counts of Dracula.
And my mum was an art student, and she did tours for at those paintings in the galleries there, and so it reminded me, because there's so many paintings of how the real Count Dracula, Vlad Tepes, how he tortured and then killed the Turks that tried to invade Austria. Then that was part of Austria and Hungary at that time. It wasn't Romania. It was so interesting, because it always reminds me, the picture, how Tolkien describes this is what literally medieval, what they did. That was a tactic. And Tolkien even says, they put him at the front end of so wherever. So they put him on display so everybody could see it even. And he says they impale him on a spike. Yes.
And he says that they used him as a banner, as a war banner. As a banner,
exactly. So they carried him even.
So Elrond's armies are outside of the capital. And they're don't have the strength to go in full force and take back the capital, but Elrond manages to rescue most of the survivors. But Sauron goes into battle against him with Celebrimbor's dead body as his standard in battle. And then we don't know what happens to his body afterwards, but presumably it's dismembered and torn apart and chucked away. And not treated with any respect.
Meat is back on the menu.
And exactly. Ends the line of Fëanor.
He was, and as we said, it's not known that he had descendants, that he had a wife, that he had children. So like you said, it's in a way the curse plays out, and that line ended. Not the whole line of Finwë, the other line where Galadriel, so the stepbrothers lines, and maybe the sister, because I still think Glorfindel is the son of one of Finwë's daughters.
And Elrond's descended from Idril, obviously.
And so there are many descendants of the first High King of the Noldor, but Fëanor's line, gone. And we haven't had any more wars over jewelry since. Well, we had the War of the Ring, but they did so much damage.
But Celebrimbor, not an evil guy. He's just
No.
he made some mistakes, didn't he? And
Yeah. But for
It's, you know-
other reasons than other protagonists, like there are many people who make mistakes, like Turin and all of them. But Celebrimbor, really, I think it was the labor and the work and something to be proud of and to prove his, and to continue his heritage, but the good things about the Noldor, because the Noldor
psychologically, but this is what I was about to say. It's like a Noldor trait to be into craftsmanship and everything, and it's almost like it's like a nationalistic pride.
Yes,
it could have been psychologically, it could have been a point of pride for him to prove that the Noldor culture isn't inherently corruptible.
No, it is. And look, there are still things surviving. Like the doors of Durin, in Moria, the West Gate of Moria. He built that together
That's a good
with.
point. We haven't mentioned those. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so he built that with Narvi, the dwarf, and again, that is one of the only times a dwarf and an elf they are friends, and this is because the Noldor were very close to the dwarves because they both loved craftsmanship and smithing and all that, and so
it's said in the Silmarillion, I think, that the smiths of Eregion and the dwarves of Khazad-dûm were the closest friendship that had ever existed between the two races. It's a unique.
Well, it is said that Eorl was really close with the dwarves because remember, Eorl was even invited. I think this is why he was gone. I think he was invited to a dwarven fest.
Was he?
To a dwarven party festive. This is why when Aredel and Meglin escaped, and I think because he was away for some dwarven whatever party.
Okay.
Don't know.
But Eorl, did he really like the dwarves, or was he just, was it a party and he was just,
I think he rather liked
dwarves. He was doing
elves.
business.
I think he rather liked dwarves than he liked elves.
Possibly.
Because they're miserable like him. Because everybody, I don't like dwarves. Spoiler.
I think it's probably more similar to the Caranthia's relationship with the dwarves, where Caranthia was basically, he was in business with them, but he didn't like them at all. It was, he was making money basically from the trade between Belagost and I forget what his kingdom is called, but it was like, he was making money and
something with H, I forgot.
It was Lake Helivorn, I think, is the lake, but there's a name of the citadel there. But he had like a whole side hustle where he was one of the other brothers of Celebrimbor's dad, where he was not really, he didn't even attend some of the battles. He wasn't at the Dagor Aglareb. He wasn't at the Near Knife. Or was he at the Near Knife on Audio? He might have been.
I think all of them who had kingdoms were, but I think the twins, the weird red-headed twins, nobody knows what happened to, what did they do? They
Amrod and
showed up.
Amrast.
Yeah.
They
Never did anything.
They're there in the Kinslaying, aren't they? They die in the Kinslaying.
Yeah, but they were
Kinslaying.
they never did anything. They were literally...
No, they're sort of non-characters, aren't they, those two?
Yeah.
We don't know anything about them, really.
No.
So that's the end of Celebrimbor anyway. He was taken into battle as a bloody, kind of man on a spike. There's a really good illustration on DeviantArt, which I'll...
Well, and I do think we will see that at the end of the show or whenever. I think that will be portrayed as well. So... Rip whoever plays him.
It's going to be a shocking moment for people.
Spoiler: your role is limited. You're not an immortal elf. Yeah. So, but interesting, because he will go back to Valinor and he will be in the Halls of Mandos.
The Halls of Mandos, and then he'll eventually be resurrected and he'll live in Valinor. So, we're not told. It's not like Fëanor, where we're told that he never is reincarnated.
Move gone.
Yeah.
See you never, dude.
Fëanor, goes back to the Halls of Mandos, but then he never leaves again. Whereas Celebrimbor, I think, will probably live in peace in Valinor eventually.
Yeah, I mean, Fëanor must have had a really, really good time with, all the Teleri he slaughtered, who obviously then also were in the halls of Mandos. That must have been a really nice gathering.
Yeah, watch,
And his mother.
Watch yourself in the halls of Mandos when you're picking up the soap in the shower.
Yeah. And his mother weaving all the weird and wicked things her son did. Yeah, what a family! Like, seriously, what a family, people.
I know. Reminds me of my family.
Yeah. But he's a cool character. And I really do think, like I said in the beginning, he's very underrated. And I do think in the show he will have a really big role. But he's so important. He's connecting all the ages. He was literally born at the beginning of time. Not at the beginning of time. He wasn't born in Gwaith-i-Mírdain, okay? But still born in Aman under the light of the tree. So he is very powerful because we know the elves that are born in Aman carry the light of the trees with them. Galadriel, all these people, they are more powerful than the dark elves who never saw the light of the trees. So that alone makes him really powerful, knowledgeable. He is a descendant of the most powerful elf that ever existed, Fëanor. I mean, good or bad, let's not count that. Let's not talk about that. But he was the most skilled, the most, he was the chosen one, his grandfather, basically. So he is really important and he's a cool character. And I think not many people talk about him. And we had so much stuff to talk about for 1.5 hours. I can talk more even. So he's a good character. And
in the TV show, how much of the backstory, the First Age stuff, do you think we'll get? Because they don't have full rights to that stuff. No, we would assume, but you've kind of got to tell some of it, I think, to
you have
understand the character and his.
You have to tell the family relationship and the history of them coming from another country, settling in Middle Earth. Why did they settle there? Why did they build these kingdoms? What is the history between the stepbrothers? And then they must tell these stories. And I think it's okay to tell some backstory without really going too deep into the First Age and telling everything about the First Age. But it must be okay you can't just say, this is Celebrimbor. He has no story. We can't mention his story because we don't have the rights. It can't be like that. I think it will be hinted at. Like, they will talk about that in a side. It will be like a side note or somebody mentioning it. Like Galadriel talking about the good old days in Valinor and his creepy grandfather and whatnot.
He wanted my hair. He was don't know what was up with that kind of thing.
Yeah, like brushing her hair. Like, I don't know.
I mean, obviously you can't depict it fully, but we assume. But I think you've probably got to show some of that in some way. But they will cut things anyway, just for the sake of brevity. We won't get like the full exposition of everything either.
No.
So you kind of got to walk a thin line in terms of like writing wise. How do you introduce the character? Fascinating adaptation, but
I'm so excited for it. The more we talk about it, the more excited I am.
It doesn't feel like it's getting any closer, does it?
It will. It will. It's just because it's the apocalypse and there will be an end to this, and then the Lord of the Rings show will come up. So, Dan, what's up for you next? What are you doing?
Well, that was going to be my next question for you. So why don't you go first and I'll round up at the end. Are you doing anything?
No, just chilling. No, I'm always saying that, but people, I have a real life job. This is just for fun on the side. Oh my God, fun side note. So my real life job is I'm a marketing director, and I work for a car manufacturer, a German one, the good ones. And so I do fun marketing films and commercials and all that. And we had an introduction, and because we have a whole new team, and we're like 500 new people in this whole department. And so we're introducing ourselves, and we're introducing our teams. And it's so cool because I told, because we all have to talk about a fun fact. What are we doing in our real life? And my fun fact was that I have a geeky YouTube channel. And because I'm very different at work, I'm very like not like this. And so I said, fun fact, I do have a YouTube channel where I talk about geeky things. And I literally had like 25 messages in my inbox from colleagues I'd never ever before talked to, and they were all like, what is your channel? Tell me your channel name. I googled it. I didn't find you with your real name. What are you talking about? Is it Star Wars? Is it? And it was so cool. I probably have a few new followers who are my colleagues now, and I'm like, no, I don't want. I don't want them to know.
You volunteered the information. They know now, so yeah.
They do. It's okay. So my real life job is really, really busy right now, and very challenging. And but I'll promise, there will always be more videos on my channel. I will do fun live streams with Dan and other guests. I have a few good guests lined up.
You've got a few in the works that you've told me about, so
yes,
there will be stuff.
Yes, and more videos to come. I will finish my Elven videos. I've written them. I just have to edit them. There will be the Noldor, where we talk about similar characters like here, and the Teleri video in the next week. So I want to drop a lore video every Wednesday, and one of these streams every Saturday. So yeah, watch out my channel, The Clueless Fangirl.
Wonderful. Okay. And for me, I have got the Silmarillion series continuing. As we're recording this, I'm still working on the second part of Chapter 13, but in theory, that should be out by the time this comes out. And Chapter 14 will be the next one. So that's the challenging chapter of Beleriand and its realms, which is
god, that's so boring.
Which is the geography chapter, which a lot of people. That chapter is their final straw where they give up on the book. So that's going to be challenging to explain and adapt. But I'm going to have fun making maps for it. I think. I've actually spent loads of time drawing maps already, so I've got them all lined up. I've got the Photoshop documents. I've just got to output all the files, and hopefully it should be easy. Yeah, he says. And I'll be continuing the Numenor series with also probably a geographical video on kind of the terrain and territories of Numenor. So that'll be fun to talk about. And
Numenor is always fun to talk about. I've
got more guests coming up as well.
You have other guests besides me?
Yeah, I do. I'm afraid. None of them are as fun as you, but I have to pad out the channel with these other people, so it is what it is. I've got. I'll be appearing on Fellowship of Fans, which is a friend of mine, not the Lord of the Rings YouTuber who covers the Lord of the Rings on Prime adaptation, and he's probably the go-to person for getting scoops and inside stuff. He's pretty clever at finding out things that he shouldn't always know necessarily, and I'll be appearing on his podcast where we're talking about the potential music on the Amazon show. So we're talking about the possibility of Howard Shore being involved and what themes they could use from the Lord of the Rings movies. So that's fun.
Nice.
So that'll be coming out in the next weeks. Not sure. We've already recorded it, but not sure when he'll be releasing it. And I'll be appearing at some point, hopefully, on the Philosopher's Games. we've been talking about doing a podcast about games and Lord of the Rings, because for those who don't know, I used to be a games developer. And he's very interested in that and covers gaming a lot on his channel, so it makes sense for us to do something like that. So that'll be fun. That's not
Chris is
recorded
amazing.
yet.
Everybody who doesn't follow Chris at the Philosopher's Game, we were talking about pronunciation, and he has the deepest lore videos ever. About Tolkien. I love him. He's so cool. He's such a nice guy. Yeah,
he is. So and he's the pronunciation don as well, isn't he? So he's made a study of Old English and these other different Finnish, Finnish, and all these other languages in order to figure out what Tolkien was driving at with the pronunciations.
Yeah,
so.
He drove me crazy. I had him on my channel, and I don't know if anybody watched it, but it's so funny. And he drove me crazy because I said all these names, and then he corrected me, and then we literally laughed for half an hour because I was so ridiculously shit at it. Yeah.
So I'll be doing something with him at some point. Hopefully, we're still talking, so hopefully we'll record that sometime in the next weeks. So that's what's going on with me. But so that's all. That's all she wrote. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time. Bye, people.
Lovelies.